echoes of an ancient myth, vibrations of the silent sound before all words, still sounding in the deep of the ear of my heart. Light from the origin of time, rays from the luminescence deeper than sun and moon, bathing the inmost recesses of the spirit's eye. These words I heard when I was a child, on my mother's knee, too deep for me to understand. And even as I grew, they remained beyond me, not in their complexity, but in their simplicity. It is said that the whole universe was born from music, a song sung in a silence deeper than we can conceive. But the echoes of this music, the strains of this song, where are they now? The raucous voices of men of power and of beasts of unearthly wickedness, these mute the voice that one would wish to hear. Or perhaps they just deafen the heart that listens, too close, too loud, too violent to allow that stillness and silence to echo deep within. Shipwrecked off the coast, icy water surrounds me, suffocates my body like a coiled snake, and causes my muscles, my skin, to ache and burn. I never expected to die like this, returning to the land of my youth after so many years away, and only to seek to do good to a hurting people, to a divided nation. And is this how it is going to be? I don't even make it back, sinking even as the coastline has come into view. Faced with the absurdity of this thought, I turn my body in an involuntary gesture of rebellion against death or rebellion for the sake of life, and feel a cough arise from within as I expel the water I have taken in. And to my surprise, this cough, when followed by a desperate gasp of breath, is answered by air. I am breathing. With breath filling my lungs, even burning cold icy air, my senses gradually return, and I realize that I am floating on my back, water engulfing me on every side. It is still water, but deadly. I open my eyes. It is dark in here, but not so dark that I cannot see. Wooden planks are visible just a few inches above my head. The ship has turned onto its side, and water has almost completely filled the hull. And soon I am afraid the ship is going to be submerged entirely. Do I really have a chance to escape, to survive, to live? I'm trapped in a sinking ship, so I fear not. But then again, with my body crying out in pain, I force myself into an upright position, and I feel my feet touch a solid surface. From here I wade forward, trying to get a feel of my surroundings. I was in my sleeping chamber, collecting my belongings when the ship collided, I suppose with a submerged iceberg, and I was thrust against the wall by the impact. That is when I must have lost consciousness. Now, by the dim light and the sense of touch, I know that the ship is almost entirely on its side, and that what was up now lies to my left, but under the icy water. So I must swim down and through it to get out of this sinking vessel. At the thought of this, my heart feels a surge of terror, a primal physical terror of the suffering of icy cold water, squeezing about me and suffocating me like a wicked snake, and the deep fear of death, of the end of my life before my time has come, before my heart has found true peace. But I swallow these fears and these thoughts with a lump in my throat, and knowing that I do not have much time, I dive under the water and press on. At first I try to keep my eyes open to see the way before me, but the cold and salty water is too much, and I find them involuntarily closing, so instead I must feel my way with my hands and with whatever interior sense of direction I still have in the disorientation that threatens to overtake me entirely and force me into passivity. As I swim forward, my right hand pressing against the wooden planked floor which has now become a wall, I realize that I failed to retrieve any of my possessions, and that if I am to escape, I will have nothing but the clothes on my back. It is too late now. There is nothing to do but move forward, at the threat of my very life. I pass now through a door, sideways, and find myself in what I know to be a narrow hallway, moving slightly upward. This is a good sign, and my heart rises in hope, even as my lungs begin to ache for air, contracting involuntarily in a terrible sensation of deprivation. I pass through another doorway, and I find my head breaking through into air. My ears are suddenly filled with the soundless noise of the atmosphere of air that replaces the murky muffledness of being underwater, and I gasp deeply to draw in breath with these starving lungs. I pause for a moment, but I only allow myself an instant to gather myself again. I wait here, my shoulder against the wall, and my sopping hair clinging to my forehead and my face. I brush it away and realize that my eyes are still closed, whether from shock or from a simple lack of the realization that I haven't opened them yet. I don't know. I open them, and to my delight, I see a pale and dim light filtering through a narrow slit ahead of me, a passage to the deck, and beyond that stars. The sight of the stars twinkling and shining in their places in the nocturnal sky smites my heart with a surprising intensity, and I find myself laughing out loud without thought, a short but deep laugh, followed by profuse tears from my eyes. Life, life. I may yet live. Moving forward again toward the alluring light of the stars awaiting me in the sky, I rise up toward them. I fly, up from the murky waters, up from the sinking ship, up from death and loss in the depth of this wreckage of life and this domain of death, and seek to join my song with theirs, the song of the stars, sung silently since the beginning of time, in eternal harmony. But the songs of old tell of ancient strife, of conflict in the heavens, of stars rebelling against stars, of gods against gods, and of an earth plunged into chaos. With this sobering thought, my flight is halted, and I realize again that I am still in the icy water, wading slowly towards the sliver of night sky that is before me, with my heavy burdened heart and my hands covered with blood. But I press on, and soon the sliver of the sky turns to a wide expanse blanketed overhead, reflecting on the waters that surround me. The great night mist burns green and purple, the family of countless stars in the cloudy, swirling constellation that flames bright on this late spring night, and closer to us than this, the three-pointed garment of the goddess Ierendal, among the greater constellations of the other gods, the seven. She is peace and love, the harmony of unity and radiant fecundity, smallest of the divinities and lowest and yet most revered of them all. These thoughts, and more than thoughts, flash across my mind now as I pause in the icy water, my body exhausted under the wide expanse of open sky above me. And my heart spontaneously reaches out, not to the great presider Ierendal, god of might and justice, but to the mother of mercy, Ierendal. And I remember a song that my own mother sang to me from my youth, from the days before memory, when I was but too small to speak. Eldarien, remember to sing always to the tender mother in your heart, and when you can, with your voice, and never betray her kindness. But it has been long since I sang to her, in silence or in words, and it has been even longer since I repaid her kindness with the fidelity that it deserves. But the words and their sense come spontaneously now, and I let my heart sing silently as I begin to swim again, towards what I know to be a mass of land in the distance, black shapes of mountain peaks against the darkened horizon, and, at their base, shores awaiting me. O Mother, save your children when they cry, for to you we turn in our desperate plight, crying out with voices directed to you, in unison among ourselves, full and true. Hear us and do not ignore, lest we despair, for we need your light, your loving care. We need it more desperately than we need the air. So come, great Mother, give us your sweet bosom, this bosom that once suckled the twin stars, and gave birth to the torrent of life on the land of Ierendal. Sweet Mother Ierendal, beloved of the Ancient One, yet new, you shine out for us above the rest, for in your mercy and goodness we seek rest. Despise us not, but be kind to us, putting us not to the test, but welcoming us amid the storm, amid the raging seas to the abode of your goodness, amid the realms of Middle-est, from whence once humanity came as from your womb, and to whence it will return beyond the grave, the tomb, when the last sun has set, and your star burns forever, brightest among the celestial ones, among the very gods. With these words burning in my heart and keeping me warm amid the death-dealing waters surrounding me, I push forward toward the land of my youth, my ancient home. Will I die here in the ocean, forgotten and unmourned, or shall I by some miracle survive this ordeal, and come to the land that awaits me, It is a land riven by strife and war, and by a plague even deeper, and which I come to aid, in whatever small way I may.
The fish are reticent this morning, eh?
Old man Morloff says, as he leans back on the ancient stump on which his father and his grandfather used to sit, and which was passed down to him, if things such as stumps can be passed down.
"What's that, father?"
asks Mirand, his son, who sits beside him on the ground, idly holding his fishing rod without much thought. The boy was never much of a fisherman. Well, and now he is not much of a boy anymore, now is he, with a wife and 3 children of his own. Good thing that fishing is not the only business around here, and that the carriages come frequently on their way between this little town of Igni, a small port to the east and a hub of the lumber trade, and the great city of Brughill to the west. For what purpose, Morloff wonders, do the citizens of Brughill need all of that lumber?
I said that the fish aren't coming.
Morloff says again, with a hint of impatience in his voice.
Something must have stirred them up.
"Wonder what it could be."
The son says softly.
"It's a quiet day and the waves are hardly moving."
The whispers of Hyliana, that's what they are. Her soft caresses on the cheek of the land.
"Aye, father, that they are."
Morloff pauses absent-mindedly as he switches his rod from his right hand to his left, and with his free hand scratches the stubble on his wrinkled chin.
Wasn't there supposed to be a ship coming in from Elsador today?
Indeed, a cargo ship full of supplies for the war effort. But it should have already arrived. It was expected early this morning, or even last night. Though it's never quite predictable how quickly the waves and the wind will bring the ships into port.
Maybe the boat is still out there then.
The father muses.
Delayed on the waves.
"I'm going to walk out to the pier,"
says the younger, eager for a chance to stretch his legs and do something other than fish.
"Perhaps I'll catch a glimpse of the boat and we can watch it coming into port."
If you insist, son.
Morloff says quietly.
I guess there's no arguing. But remember, there are only so many hours in the day.
"I'll be back soon."
With this, Mirand hurries away along the shoreline to the south, where the mooring for boats lies, a small wharf with only space for one large barge and a few small boats. The morning air is cold, but the sun peeks through the clouds over the ocean to the east and shows her warm and consoling face, sending countless glimmers of singing light over the face of the sea, glimmers too brilliant for Mirand to take in with his frail vision. Shielding his eyes from the light, he picks his way over the rocks littering the beach and around the logs that have washed up during the currents of numerous days and nights, obeying the ceaseless rhythm of the sea. It takes him a few moments to notice that there are a few more logs than usual, more than there were the previous day. No, these are not logs. They are planks of hewn, formed, sanded and treated wood, but now broken and littered about the beach. What is this? Mirand thinks to himself, as he looks about the beach for anything that would give him an indication of what happened. But he does not have long to think, and he follows with his eyes more than he follows with his mind. Clearly, there are signs of a shipwreck, bottles floating in the shallows between hills of grey sand, clothing and other miscellaneous items jumbled about as if tossed off by a careless man, ready to throw himself into sleep and unwilling to arrange his belongings in an orderly way. But among all of the signs of wreckage, Mirand's eyes are drawn to one sight, a human figure lying face down in the sand and rock, with a slab of wood clutched tightly in unmoving arms.
"Oh, by the 7 divinities!"
cries the fisherman and leaps forward to the figure. Without second thought, he turns the body over and looks deeply into the face of a middle-aged man with worn features, visibly having weathered many sorrows and much strife, and yet also bearing, even without consciousness, a touch of softness. The figure is breathing, and air whistles lightly through slightly open lips and moves the hair of a short but thick brown beard. Mirand, still without thinking, pries the life-saving bark of wood from the man's arms and hoists him onto his back.
Well, this is the catch of a lifetime, isn't it?
Mirand says to himself, and then is astounded at his own disrespect or his humour.
It's the catch of your lifetime, friend. Let us only pray that you survive. It's a wonder you're still breathing. The water must have been terribly frigid.
The unnamed man remains unconscious for the entirety of the trip along the shoreline to Morloff, and then, as the two fishermen together climb the hill to the village and to their homestead. The latter is simply two log cabins facing one another at a 45-degree angle and sharing a yard with a low plank fence and a little vegetation, but only what can grow in this cold region, with a short spring and summer followed by a harsh autumn and a harsher winter, snow blossoms, merry-weather heath and targ root, with a row or two of potatoes. Inside the house of the younger fisherman, they lay the man on a bed and kindle a roaring fire in the hearth near him. His clothing had already dried by the time Mirand found him on the beach, but they consider removing it and replacing it with something cleaner and warmer, but abstain for the moment, hoping that he will soon awake. And their hopes are not disappointed, as within a matter of minutes they hear a sharp intake of breath, followed by a groan. Without opening his eyes, the man begins to speak, not in a clear voice, but in almost indecipherable mumbles.
Melin na elin niranya tudan melin, hasiati.
The fishermen look at one another in confusion. The mumbles were audible enough to be heard, but they remain unintelligible nonetheless.
A foreigner, perhaps?
Morloff whispers, again scratching his stubbly chin.
I don't recognize the language,
says the son.
It doesn't sound like any language I've ever heard.
Well, you've never even left this town, my boy.
That's not true,
replies the former, indignant.
I've been to Brugg Hill on business and for my marriage to Cillian. And then there was that time that little Elsa needed the doctor, and we brought her, remember?
Hush, son,
says Morloff.
What?
Our guest is awake.
Mirand turns to look at the man and finds him silently looking up at his rescuers. His eyes are a deep and rich blue, sober yet kind, and yet difficult to look into for long. Mirand soon turns his gaze away.
Welcome,
Mirand says.
Looks like the gods were watching over you and fished you right from the sea.
Well, my son here fished you from the sea, actually,
Morloff interjects.
And carried you all the way here at that.
Thank you.
The man on the bed whispers.
I take it I am in Igni?
Yes, indeed,
replies the younger fisherman.
And you are welcome. For the saving, I mean. And I expect for other things besides. You are in our home, after all.
What my son means to say is that we're glad you're here, and you are most welcome.
The father interjects. The man nods and closes his eyes again. There is a moment of pregnant silence, broken only by the presence of a woman who steps in through the doorway.
Ah, my dear,
Mirand says, hurrying to his wife.
Aliyah, we found this man here lying unconscious on the beach. You see, the ship that was supposed to come in last night seems to have fallen afoul and came only in pieces.
Yes, word has reached the village. Your feet carrying him here did not go unnoticed. Is he well, or is he injured?
The woman replies.
He seems well. He has only just awakened.
Aliyah walks to the side of the bed and bends down to inspect the stranger in her home. After a long moment in which the two standing men look on, uncomprehending of her feminine ways, though the man lying on the bed senses much more than they, even with eyes closed, she rises again and says,
Well, have you offered him anything to eat or drink?
Well, no, we were about to do so.
Mirand cries.
Recall he only just awoke a moment before you came in.
Yes. Then I shall fix him some hot soup and warm some bread if he is up for it.
Aliyah says, and then to the man,
What say you to that?
I would appreciate it greatly,
whispers the man lying on the bed.
I would also like to know the names of my kind hosts.
Of course, that is only fitting,
Morloff replies.
Our apologies, sir. We are not used to hosting strangers or people saved from the ocean, mind you. My name is Morloff, son of Nymfel, and this here is my only son, Mirand.
What is your surname?
asks the laying man, his eyes now wide open and showing complete alertness, a good sign.
Feskar.
Mirand replies.
Not a very creative surname, but chosen by my great-great-grandfather. It's an old East Telmeric word for fisherman.
Ah, I see,
Responds the man.
and this must be your wife.
My name is Aaliyah. Know that you are most welcome in our home for as long as you find it fitting or necessary.
Again, I thank you, but perhaps you should question what kind of man you have welcomed into your home before you offer him such an unconditional welcome.
Your eyes tell me enough, sir.
She replies. To this, the man has no reply, except that he lowers these eyes and absent-mindedly stares at his hands laid across his abdomen.
As for us, we would be happy to know more about you, for your sake as well as ours. By what name are you called?
Morloff says.
My name is Eldarien. I am the son of Ierendal of Falstead, and our surname is Ilumiel.
Eldarien Ilumiel.
Says Aaliyah.
Your name has a beautiful ring to it.
Thank you, madam.
At this, the woman laughs.
Madam, I have not been called that in ages. Perhaps never. People do not speak like that around these parts, but only in the great cities, unless they consider themselves some great nobles of some great house. I assume it is none of our business to inquire if you are either.
So you may ask anything you wish, as I am your guest and indebted to you for my life. But I assure you that I am neither nor think myself to be.
Well then,
Begins Mirand.
I would like to...
But he is cut off by his wife's gentle touch on his arm.
Hush, Mirand. Let the man eat and recover first, and then there will be time for conversation.
She says.
It is all right. I feel my energy returning already.
Eldarien says.
Yes, and that energy will be gone in a few minutes at this rate. Rest, I tell you.
With this, she turns away, beckoning for her husband to follow her into the kitchen.
What is it, dear?
Mirand asks quietly as his wife sets about gathering vegetables for the soup.
This man is no ordinary traveller.
Aaliyah says.
Indeed.
He asks. Aaliyah explains.
You have heard the way he speaks.
Many speak that way, just not here.
You may be right, but you have surely seen the nature of his clothing and his arms and the knots in his hair.
The what?
The knots, you fool.
Don't call me a fool.
You're right, I am sorry.
She says with a sigh.
But he has the marks all over him.
The marks of what exactly?
Mirand asks, trying not to reveal the degree of his ignorance.
The clothing he wears was designed to go under a suit of plate armour and covers a chain shirt. And his arms have not the shape of an ordinary labourer's. It is not brute muscle he has, but toned strength.
So you're saying he's a warrior or soldier of some kind?
And not just of some kind.
Aaliyah replies.
Ordinary guards and infantry fighters do not wear plate mail.
I see. And his hair? The braids?
Not just the braids, but the knots at the end. But I'll let him inform you of their meaning soon enough. For now, let's get to work preparing him something to eat.
Aye, but do you think perhaps he's dangerous?
I wouldn't suppose so. We will be cautious regardless. He will stay at your parents' house tonight, and we'll let him in here, around the children, only during the day. I suspect he won't want to stay long.
So many secrets.
Soon enough. Remember that I was raised in the city before we met.
Are things really that different there?
Mirand asks.
Yes and no.
Aaliyah answers.
They shouldn't be. But there are a lot of things that we build up around ourselves which shouldn't be there. It seems to me that this man is running away from some of those, or perhaps from all of them.
Eldarien eats the soup which is brought to him very slowly, cradling the bowl in his hands and sipping on it, as if its very proximity to him and the warmth flowing from it is permeating and loosening his frozen bones and bringing life to his body, which was not long ago at the point of death. His hosts refrain from asking questions as long as there is still something in the bowl. The two fishermen try to act occupied with something meaningful, though they do not fail to give the impression of hovering around their guest in anxious expectation. Aaliyah has gone out to the children, who play noisily in the yard and can be heard softly through the walls and windows of the house. Presumably, she is telling them of the man in their house and of the proper manners, caution, and kindliness that is called for in such a situation. When at last she comes in again, Eldarien is finishing up the final bit of food in his bowl, which he then hands to her with a deep bow of the head, a silent thanks worth more than many words.
It is time, I presume, that we talk?
He then says, looking at those present in the room with him.
If you feel up to it.
Morloff says.
It would be a comfort to us knowing who and what kind of man is staying with our family, as you yourself said.
I assure you that you have nothing to fear from me, any more than you would fear from any man. What I intend to say, rather,
Eldarien adds as if struggling for words,
is that I mean you no harm.
Tell us from whence our guest hails.
Aaliyah says kindly, though with authority.
Originally or in the immediate present?
You are from Telmerion, are you not?
That much is obvious. My speech and my manner is the same as yours. I was in fact raised in a village not unlike this one, and in a humble home much like this.
The name?
Mirand inquires.
I think I mentioned it before. It was Falstead,
Eldarien answers.
though it exists no more.
The others do not say anything, and so Eldarien continues.
I was raised in toil and in play, and taught the ways both of speech and of sword by a dear acquaintance of the family, whom I also considered a personal friend.
Mirand suppresses the desire to look at his wife, to see her reaction.
When the days of my youth found conclusion, I moved on and soon began to make my living with the blade.
You were a mercenary?
Morloff asks.
I suppose this is not exactly a consoling introduction.
Eldarien says gently, with a subtle expression which conceals innumerable emotions.
But no, I was not, nor am I a mercenary.
What then, a soldier?
Mirand suggests.
I was employed in the service of the Imperial Army, and eventually found myself stationed in the hinterlands of Tel Velfana. That is the immediate place from which I now hail.
Eldarien is quite aware that these words could have made his hosts tremendously uncomfortable, and so he adds,
I no longer align myself with the Imperial Army. You can see me now as any other man.
Worry not, friend.
Aaliyah says.
We still believe in the goodness of the Empire, even though the strife that rends at the heart of our nation does not leave us untouched.
Well, that is a difficult thing to believe.
Eldarien sighs.
We did terrible things there,
We have heard distant echoes,
says Mirand.
but little has reached us, as occupied as we are with the ill here at home. But let me say, just be glad that you were only following orders.
I was in fact a captain.
Eldarien sighs, involuntarily lowering his eyes. There is a moment of dense silence as the import of these words is weighed by each of those in the room.
But yes,
Eldarien continues at last, breaking the silence.
I was only following orders. Yet sometimes orders must be disobeyed in order to follow the deeper certainty inscribed in the heart. And this I failed to do.
Aye, but here you are now.
Morloff observes.
Yes, and I vow to never disobey that deeper truth again, no matter the cost.
Are you safe?
Aaliyah asks. Eldarien raises his eyes and looks at her. She is moved by the impact of his gaze, which bears in it a sadness perhaps deeper than she has ever seen.
Are any of us safe?
He says at last.
If you ask whether I defected, the answer is no. At least I submitted my formal letter of resignation. But after 6 months without an answer, I departed from my post, unable to abide by the orders that were coming from the general, passed down to him, I believe, from above. I asked my men to come with me, but most refused. And the few who did,
A shadow passes over Eldarien's face.
found their tomb in the depths of the ocean.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Aaliyah says. Eldarien nods gently.
And I am sorry that it is so.
If this is too painful for you,
Mirand suggests.
we can continue this conversation later.
No, it is fine.
Eldarien replies.
I have already witnessed too much death for one lifetime. But please let us turn to other matters.
The others nod silently.
Despite what I have told you, I return to my homeland not in flight but in response. There is great need here, and I wish to be of assistance in whatever small way I may, and I hope not with the blade.
But we are in a civil war,
Morloff cries.
and you are a soldier, a commander in arms. Do you expect to sit by and refuse to take sides?
I do intend to refuse to take sides,
Eldarien replies.
but I hope to do more than sit by. Surely there is some service I can render to the people of this land, as humble as this service may be.
Your sword may be needed yet,
Aaliyah says.
though not in the way that you fear.
Indeed?
Eldarien looks at her again, curiosity in his eyes.
There is a threat to life arising perhaps greater than that of civil war, more death-dealing than either the Imperial or rebel armies. There are hordes of a different force, and a danger much more unpredictable.
Eldarien nods his head silently in understanding and says softly,
I think I know of what you speak. Though in Tel Velfana we knew little of this, no more than scattered rumours, either dismissed in doubt or exaggerated in fear. Please, tell me the truth as much as you know.
We have taken to calling them the Druidach.
Morloff begins.
Not yet has our village had a direct encounter with them, though rumour and hint of them stirs in the mountains to the west.
It is like something out of the deepest of nightmares, the darkest of fears.
Mirand says.
The forces of darkness crawling out of the shadowed holes and crevices of the earth, seeking to devour the light.
That may be a little much.
Aaliyah says to her husband.
We are uncertain of how much they are willing to venture from their caves, and even more uncertain of their motivations, if any motivation they have.
Whether they are our forefathers' fathers brought to life, or whether they are some new abomination spawned in the earth, I do not know.
Morloff continues.
But they feed, and to do this they must indeed reach out to what lives to devour it with their own deadness. The foothills of the Teldren Mountains have been all but emptied, farms left desolate by the departure of their inhabitants, whose livestock were taken in the night or left in a bloody mess.
Do you know any more of what is occurring further west across the mountains?
Eldarien asks.
Very little, I am afraid.
Morloff answers.
Do you have any suggestions of whom I might ask? This is a matter of great importance and one for which I return to this land.
I fear what you will need more than information is a sword.
Mirand says.
Whatever these Druidach are, they are vicious beasts.
They are perhaps no more than beasts, Mirand,
Aaliyah responds.
but it is well to have information.
It is always well to have information before wielding the sword.
Eldarien agrees.
Indeed, more deeply than information, one must have understanding, otherwise the sword will be guided ill and will not strike true, even if it reaches its target.
The dense atmosphere following these words is interrupted by a knock at the door.
Perhaps it will be necessary to finish this conversation later.
Aaliyah says.
I think the children are here with dear Yalia and will be wanting supper soon.